the peon who works has to believe in the brand that your company sells, because everybody eventually is responsible for the positive word of mouth and for doing their best on the brand and the company. So that is the first level of stakeholder.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today it is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce you all to this very particular session where we are going to know more about the importance of branding. My name is Harsh and I'm going to moderate this session for all of you, wherein I'm going to introduce you all about this session and perhaps the person who is going to interact and address all of us. First of all, I request you to kindly acknowledge and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest, and she is very dynamic, very interesting personality, none other than Madam Trapti Bhandari, who is here with us. I would like to request all the persons, those who are watching this session on YouTube, to kindly upload in the comment section and welcome the presence of our guest. Madam Trapti Bhandari is a business leader and marketer with 23 plus years of experience in blue chip companies like Reckitt Benckiser, Pfizer, Bons and Lomb, and GSK Consumer Healthcare. Recognized through multiple business awards, she is an eminent speaker, writer, and jury on business forums. She is the author of best-selling business book Pragmatism, Pragmatic Marketing Insight for Winning Indian Consumers. Apart from her passion for marketism, she is a life and leadership coach with certification from Consciousness Coaching South Africa. Madam Trapti, with her multifaceted personality, has been an inspiration for many women in the corporate world. So, first of all, ma'am, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts. We are extremely very happy to have you.
Thank you, Harsh, and welcome everyone, and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's a pleasure. So, ma'am, before moving to the topic of today's session, actually, I have some questions on your recent book. Very recently, your book published, Pragmatism, was published. What actually inspired both of you to write this book, and how actually it is different?
Okay, so the book is, as you can see, the name itself, Pragmatism. Yeah, so it's pragmatism is pragmatic marketing, which is relevant in today's times. That's how I looked at it. So my husband and I both have been in the corporate world and both have been marketers for a very long time, almost 24, 25 years each. So together we have about 5 decades with us. And often when we discussed with each other, we felt that in today's marketing world, when we discuss in corporate with our creative agencies, or even we've been jury members in many cases, we feel that the understanding of the Indian consumer is very limited. And even if there is an understanding, people do not accept consumers the way they are. So, which is why our marketing is very tilted towards the Western world. So, when we analyzed, we felt there were three main things that need to be considered. One is all our MBA is Western, right? So therefore, we follow Western frameworks, Western examples, Western theories. They are not really close to the Indian cousins that we have. Yeah. The second thing is digital is evolving so much, but the Indian consumer is a fused consumer. While on one hand he or she is very digitally savvy, there is a lot of tradition and culture rooted, and therefore it is important to have digital on top of classical marketing and a blend which is applicable to an Indian consumer. And the third thing is most books are once again, or our training material is written by theoreticians, not practitioners. So therefore they do not understand, or they do understand, but they do not appreciate to the fullest, the challenges that are applicable in the real world and the solutions, the end-to-end solutions which are required to be able to hit the challenges and become successful in the Indian market. So with these three thoughts, we put together Pragmatism. So pragmatism is pragmatic marketing. It is Indian. It has a lot of digital in it, and digital in every aspect of marketing, whether it's brand or consumers or segmentation or the way we talk to consumers from a communication perspective. Everything about it has to be digital, Indian, and most importantly, we have filled it with a lot of examples which are not the typical Nike Amazon only. We also have those, but we have a lot of Indian examples of both successes and failures, because we learn from failures and we need to see why people were successful. So that's how we put the book together. It has been acknowledged widely. Today it's a bestseller. In fact, in WH Smith, which is the airport book chain, it is still the book of the month for the last 4 months. We launched it in October, but it has been constantly number one. We've got endorsements from Mr. Harish Goenka, Deep Kalra, Prasun Joshi. So Touchwood, I think it is a book for all MBA students. It is a book for corporators who are into business and been doing branding and marketing for 10, 12 years. It is a book for entrepreneurs because it tells you what works in the Indian market. And it is a book for anybody who wants to really do business in India. So that's what Pragmatism is about, written by me and my husband, Arvind Bhandari, who works with Nestle and currently is the global head for nutrition.
All right, ma'am. It was really very interesting to listen all these things from you, and I must tell my viewers that I have seen that this book is considered as the book of the month by WH Smith, and the two book I have seen that first one is Yo, and the second one is Pandemonium by Tamal Bandyopadhyay, The Great Banking Tragedy. They both books, and we have done the interview with him also, and today we are with you also. My next question to you is how did you come up with this very interesting topic? I like your topic, the book of this on which you have written.
The name, the title. Yes. So actually, as I explained to you just now, we felt that pragmatism it's not just a title, but it has to be a way of doing marketing, and we want it to become a currency. So when you say pragmatic marketing, it is not just a theory which is used, but it is actually practicality of the theory in the Indian market. And that's how we thought about it. We said it has to be a name which is slightly different, which sticks with people and which evokes emotions. So it's, as I said, pragmatism now should stand for anything that is pragmatic, that is digital, and that is Indian. And that's how we looked at it and titled it.
It's quite interesting, ma'am. Ma'am, my next question to you is, what is your favorite chapter?
In the book?
Yes.
Actually, there are quite a few because we have written, but I think a couple of them actually, very interesting ones are, one is on segmentation, because typically the segmentation that we are used to, again from our Kotler days and the way things are demographic, psychographic, and these segmentation in today's digital world, when you can actually go and address an audience in any time of the day, any part of the world. Today we are doing a digital conference. I'm in Switzerland, you're in India, so any time of the day, any mood that the person is, any locality that the person is. So there are lots of other areas you can target the consumer. So just demographic and psychographic may not be sufficient, is what we thought. And therefore the segmentation chapter has been put down actually looking at the Indian sensibilities. So for instance, a Punjabi is different from a Gujarati, is different from a South Indian, right? And there are a lot of things that unite them, but there are certain cultural nuances which are different. And if those can also be taken as a part of segmentation, your communication and innovation of products can be far superior. So the chapter on segmentation is very interesting. And the other chapter is actually related to the topic that we have today, which is cult branding. So how do you make your brand a cult brand? Not just a regular brand which consumers buy because it's a functional brand, but how can you make it a brand where you don't have to talk about it? The consumers start talking about it. So in a way, they are doing your marketing. So how do you and on cult brand, we have actually, before getting into cult brand, we have defined the brand in a very Indian system. So there are 4 types of brands. As per what we have written, and this is completely our thinking, basis our understanding. The first one is the brand which just says buy me, like a salt brand, which is called So there is a Swarthi brand. Swarthi, as you know, is selfish, which just talks to the consumer, talks down to the consumer, and says, "Here I am, your brand. Take me." Okay, like a Tata, like a, let's say, one of the ONGCs or this. They come with a lot of authority, but that's it. You don't have a two-way communication. So that's the Swarthi brand. Then you have the Sarthi brand, who tries to take you along, right? As in, so there is a lot of give and take. Most of the brands in India which are doing well, like a Surf or a Horlicks or a Dove, would lie in that where they try to take the consumer alongside, and there is communication, but it is still not completely two-way. And even if it is two-way, the consumer is not carrying the communication. Okay, and the last one is where cult brand lies, where we want the brands to reach, which is Swabhu. Swabhu is, it's in me. The brand is literally like that. So like a Harley Davidson, and I don't know if you guys, if you must have heard of Harley Davidson, the bike, wherein it no longer remains just a product. Then it becomes a community. It's like a Harley Davidson community. It's like an Oprah Winfrey, which is a big brand. It's a community. You're proud to be a part of the community. It's not just about a functional brand. Of course, it's a bike which I can ride, but it liberates me to go wherever we want. I'm proud of being a part of this community. I will talk about it. So that's where then the brand has a loyalty which is far beyond a transactional value of give and take. So that's where you need to reach your brand. And to do that, you have to be an authentic brand who really understands the consumer and understands the language and gives them and shows them the way which is a little beyond what they can see. So that's what cult branding is about. And I think that chapter has, if one can really follow the things that are required to make a cult brand, I think we'll be far successful marketers. So those are the two which are really my favorite. Digital marketing is a great chapter, but I mean, it has the book again. It's not about, we don't think marketing is just about, putting brands and selling them and communication. Marketing starts from the point you put down a vision for the company, because if your vision is right, then you will not just, think of today, but you will think of future, and you will think of how to reach the future. So it starts from visioning. We have spoken about the multiple aspects of marketing, and then we have gone on to end with selling, because that's the ultimate point of truth. So if you see, Pragmarketing starts with Indian society, understanding the Indian consumer, why is he different, and how you need to talk to him from a communication innovation perspective. Then it talks about how setting the right vision is important, how to set the right vision. Then it talks about the various aspects of marketing, which is STP, segmentation, targeting, positioning, communication, innovation, digital marketing. We've spoken about the future of marketing in this situation, current situation, where everything is so uncertain. How do you still maintain certain aspects of marketing which are constant? And then we have moved on to selling. So that's the end-to-end of the book. And I'm sure viewers, a lot of people have read it, and a lot of people who today are your audience may want to pick up the book and become superior marketeers by using our experience.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing with all these information with us. And I think it's a kind of privilege today. We got to hear all these things from you. And I would like to tell my viewers that those who are looking for this book, they can find a link in the description of this video, and they can go and buy this book. Ma'am, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is branding in front of and behind the curtain. Ma'am, my first question to you is, when we talk about brand architecture, there are two very distinct views: branding in front of and branding behind the curtain. What's the difference?
So there are a couple of ways to look at this. One is, and we just spoke about some cult brands and branding, there are times every brand comes with a set of values, right? So when you see a brand, there are certain things that it evokes in your mind, an imagery that it evokes in your mind. Okay, you think about the functional part of your brand, but more importantly, you think about the emotional part of your brand. You think of whether the brand is trusting, caring, whether it's a scientific brand or is it a consumer brand, so there are a lot of imagery that it shows. Now, a real good or a mega brand normally tries to get into multiple innovations and extensions as well, right? So when you're talking about a brand, and when you say front of the brand, it is the brand the way it is, right? So if let me take an example of let me take of Horlicks, which is the brand that I worked on for a very, very long time. It's a MFD brand, a milk food brand. When I talk of Horlicks, the emotions it extrudes are, it's a warm brand, it's a caring brand, it has clinical scientificness, but it is about the brand which is warm and caring for the family. Now, today when I talk about Horlicks, I will have it upfront on the pack because I want consumers who relate to that to pick me up. But if I were to extend the brand and pick it and get into various other, because it's a food brand, it's a nutrition brand. So it can be nutrition biscuits, it can be nutrition in terms of, various life stages. Like for mothers, Horlicks is for pregnant women. Horlicks protein is for men who want protein in their lifestyle. Women's Horlicks is for calcium, so on and so forth. So there are various extensions, and every extension also has some loyalty to the category that it comes from. Like biscuits come from biscuit category, drink will come from a drink category. So when you talk about front of the brand, it is the brand and it's bear this, and it is Horlicks. But now when I launch a biscuit, I have to follow the codes of the biscuit. So in some cases, I might want Horlicks to be the main brand and I will say biscuits. But in some cases, I want biscuits to be the main shouting point, but I want its endorsement to come from Horlicks. And what endorsement it will give is, it's a warm, caring, trusted, good quality brand. But the code is biscuit, right? So therefore, depending on the extension that you're talking about, or depending on the values that you want to talk for this, the front of the brand, you decide whether the brand is the main brand, it is a support brand, or it may actually be something like from the house of Horlicks, where you just want a distant connotation, but you don't want it to hijack the entire product. For example, I'll give you, I worked on another very big brand called Dettol. Now, if you launch Dettol, extended itself into various products like shaving cream and soaps, of course, is a big one, and it had antiseptic creams. Now, we also had another product called Lysol in Reckitt, okay? And Lysol was also for hygiene, but Lysol was kept for bathrooms and stuff, you know about Lysol, right? So there was a very strong debate on whether we should launch a floor cleaner from Dettol, okay? And the reason we stayed away from it is because the values of Dettol are more for the body, for your skin. Would you like something which is used on a floor to come on to you? So therefore, you have to think about where you use your brand. However, had we decided to make it Dettol, then we wouldn't have said Dettol floor cleaner. We would have said blah blah, whatever the name was, from the house of Dettol, so that you're just lending the quality of Dettol, but the product is different and it is not impacting or making Dettol inferior. So that's what one has to be careful about when you do front of the branding or just a support branding. I hope I've answered. Wood.
Yes, ma'am. Indeed, you have given very beautifully explained and given a very detailed overview. Ma'am, my next question to you is how branding is managed internally, colors, what audience perceive of the brand externally?
Okay, so any organization or any brand has multiple stakeholders, right? The first stakeholder is actually your own employees. Because if they believe in the brand and they believe in the vision and the essence of the brand, what is the purpose of the brand? Why is the brand there? What are they doing? If they believe in it, they will be able to convince their consumers, their customers, who are the salespeople, the retailers, etc. And they will be able to be honest to what the brand delivers and do a great job on the brand. If they don't believe it, then, it will show somewhere on the work that they do on the brand, right? So first audience to my mind is not only the brand managers, but even the peon who works has to believe in the brand that your company sells, because everybody eventually is responsible for the positive word of mouth and for doing their best on the brand and the company. So that is the first level of stakeholders. The second level of stakeholders is actually the customers. And when I say customers, they are like your distributors, your shopkeepers, because all of them have to have a very positive feel and they have to believe in the brand as much as you do for them to be positive endorsers and influencers of the brand. The third one is influencers, and influencers means those customers who have been your customers for a long time and become so loyal that they have now started endorsing your brand. Or in cases where it's not direct marketing, like for instance, doctors. If you have a product which is a medicine, a brand which is a medicine, and a doctor has to write it, so you have two customers, you have two consumers. One is the doctor who has to write it because he believes in your product, and the consumer who eventually has it. So that is the third level, which is the influencers. And the fourth level is the final consumer. Again, in the final consumer, you may have two. You may have a primary consumer and a secondary consumer. For instance, in a product which is meant for children, children don't go and buy. The mother buys, but the end consumer is the child. So she will buy something which she believes in, but which her child will accept. So if she buys, again, coming to the same, if it's a milk food drink, she will buy only if the child likes the taste. If the child doesn't like the taste, she will, even if she believes in it, she can't buy it. So there are these 4-5 levels of stakeholders which a brand has to service, and sometimes the requirements of each stakeholder from the brand might be different. Like I said, the mother may require trust and nutrition value, the child may require taste. The seller, the distributor may require confidence that the brand will have a long-term life, so therefore the back end of the brand is right. And the employers again will have to believe in the purpose of the brand for them to give their 100% to it.
All right, ma'am. I think again it was a quite insightful answer from your side, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, they will learn from this. And not only I think, but I do strongly believe this. Ma'am, my next question to you is, actually this question is especially for startups. Is it compulsory to make a story and make it viral for improving the trust of customers?
I don't think anything is compulsory. But again, if today, if you see the way marketing has evolved in the last few years, storytelling has gained a lot of importance. So irrespective of whether you're a startup brand or a well-established brand, storytelling ensures that you engage the consumer very well, and you almost become a part of their life, because when they can, storytelling helps them to relate with you. And when they can relate with you, they will stick with you. So therefore, I think storytelling is, I mean, it might be a big word, but essentially what it means is you have to get into the shoes of the consumer, understand the way they lead life. And sometimes it is not only about your brand. You have to understand the circumstances and the context that the consumer is in. And then how can your brand actually be helpful to them? How can they improve the life of the consumer? And if you have to talk about that, then the best way to tell them is with something that they can relate to. And that's storytelling, right? So I think for a startup, it is probably a little more important, though, as I said, it is important for any brand, because they really have to tell the consumer why are they there, what is the reason for their existence, and how do they fit into the consumer's life. So if they can bring that out very vividly, then the consumer will be far more likely to try them out. So therefore, I think it is a great form of engaging the consumer. If not storytelling, the other form is to make it very functional. And there is a very important need which is unserviced. So if a startup company finds that and just tells them blatantly, here, this was always your need, and today we are here to service it. But then they have to be the first comers or the newcomers in it, the first players in it. If 10 people are already in that business, then they have to really get into storytelling as to why is it that they are so important. But as I'm saying, if possible, storytelling should be a way of doing marketing and doing engaging communication.
Indeed, ma'am. Ma'am, my next question to you is, how does the logo communicate your brand, and what does logo color say about your brand?
Okay, so I think it's a very important question, because a logo in its entirety, whether it is the color of the logo, the font of the logo, or the icons that are there along with the logo, like a Nike has a swoosh. I think all of that is what tells you, both subliminally as well as outspokenly, about what the brand is. What is the brand trying to talk to you about? What are the emotions that are evoked when you see the brand? What is the imagery that the brand has? What is the personality of the brand? And holistically, what a brand should mean to you. So I think it's very important to have the right color, the right logo. And a lot of work has been done on the semantics, is what it is called, because it's not spoken, but it is what is given out subconsciously when you're there, so the semantics of the brand are very important, and colors have a very different role. For instance, uh, blue, for instance, stands for authority, formal. So if there's a bank or an institution which has to stand for that, or even a scientific brand, they may like to use blue. Red stands for bold. So, a brand like Coke or Boost, which are about bravery, boldness, or, they have red, striking, Then sensuousness is purple. So you may have a lot of women care brands in, purple. Orange stands for warmth, caring. So brands which are about that, which are family brands like Horlicks, for instance, is orange. Uh, Again, sometimes you try to use the functionality. For instance, food brands like to stay in the orange area. Herbal brands are in green area. So colors have a big role to play. A gold brand may be a very premium brand. Black is sometimes very premium and classy. So it's very important to have the right color. And of course, logo, I think a lot of us understand an impactful logo versus a youthful logo versus a friendly logo. So I think a lot of work needs to be done on what the brand logo is. And once it is done, it has to be checked out with consumers to see what are the emotions it evokes and are they right as per what you wanted them to feel about your brand.
Indeed, ma'am. Again, it was really a very wonderful answer from your side. Ma'am, my next question to you is how to handle negative comments and social media trolling about your brand.
Okay, so first of all, you have to see why is it that the comment is negative, because sometimes negative comments are also good for the brand. They help the brand grow. They help the brand grow in the right direction, because they know that they tell you that probably what you're doing on the brand is not the best thing, right? Both in terms of product innovation as well as communication. So negative comments necessarily are negative, but of course if they are so there's a difference. There's a comment which criticizes a brand for something, and there's a comment which criticizes the entire company, and which almost pulls you down so much that you become bad in the eyes of the consumer. Those are the comments to be watched out for. And 2-3 examples that one can think of is, right now we have seen negative publicity on. One was Maggi. You remember the Maggi controversy when it was announced that there was lead in the Maggi product and all that. There was a lot of negative controversy on it, and I think the company handled it a little slowly, though actually the product was great and there was no problem because the testing methodology was wrong. So in that case, I think it is important to bring out the right authentic thing about the brand. But there are some cases like the current thing where we saw I think it was Titan, right? Yeah, when Titan had the advertising about the Muslim mother-in-law and the Hindu daughter-in-law. It was Tanish, yeah, it was Tanish.
Also, we have the case of Surf Excel recently, or I think 2-3 years back.
Yeah, when they did the Kumbh Mela thing. Yeah.
No, so actually, there's a Muslim boy traveling in cycle during Holi festival.
Holi, yeah. So Surf Excel actually has had 2 or 3 of them. There's a Holi one and there's a Kumbh Mela one. So I think the first thing is the brand has to be responsible, and if you are going against the culture of any particular community, I think they have to be very conscious about is that something that they want to do, because a brand eventually has to be responsible. A brand is there to service the needs of the consumer. In some cases they may be bigger and give a larger life, but only if they fall into if they have the right to do it. So I think the first thing for me is the brand has to be responsible. The second thing which is very important is the brand has to be authentic. So if they're doing it just to get some cheap publicity, then consumers will throw it back at them, But if they put that down as an essence, and they say that the brand says that I'm always going to try to change, be progressive, and try to change something which I feel is wrong, then they have to stick to it. For instance, in the case of Tanish, I thought that their intention was quite good, but probably the way they had tried doing something like it before also, when they had shown widow remarriage and all that. But somewhere they got a little hassled when they were strolling and they withdrew it. Now they may have their own reasons, because I think the employee got threat calls and all. So first thing is you have to be cognizant of what your brand is, that the path that your brand wants to take, because just putting one communication, getting into controversy, pulling it out doesn't do good. Either you believe in it and you do it throughout, okay, because you really think that will do good for your brand and for the community at large, or you don't play into that area. And the second thing is, I think if the consumer understanding is not complete, then these kind of faux pas happen, where you take one aspect and play lightly with it. You can't afford to do that, because the consumers, there's a lot of emotion attached with religion, attached with relations, and unless and until you can understand the complete context, because and again, if you see Pragmatism, the book, we have spent a whole chapter on Indian society, because an Indian consumer is very different from a Western consumer. And just 2 or 3 things I'll say about this is, for instance, when you talk to an Indian consumer, there are they've come from a different background. And their thinking is, there are 4 things that work in an Indian society. The first is hierarchy. So if in an Indian society, we are used to hierarchy. Somebody is senior, somebody is junior. We try to rank. So we rank our Bollywood actors. There's a Shah Rukh who's number 1. There's an Amitabh who's number 1. There's so and so. Then we rank even fruits, for instance. Mango is the king of fruits. So everywhere there's a hierarchy, and we are very conscious of that hierarchy. So that has to be kept in mind when you do communication or innovation. Then the second thing is holism, which means we don't exist as an individual. I'm Trupti, but yes, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a mother-in-law. Sorry, not a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. So when you talk to me as a marketeer, you will talk to me in the context of what I am as a holistic thing. And that one has to be very conscious about. When you saw the Tanishq ad, probably it was playing somewhere in between, The third thing that is very important is Indians believe in a lot of continuity. So everything is about, arguments. We believe in afterlife, right? So everything is about, if you do good, you get good, those kind of things. This thinking is very different from the way a Western consumer thinks. So just because you want to change something, you can't go and just attack it. You have to take it in the context. You have to see how you are projecting it in the right manner. For instance, I think the thought behind Tanishq was more of bringing 2 religions together, and celebrating everything together. But it fell into a very bad controversy. Probably they could have handled it a little better. So that's what I feel, you have to be authentic, you have to be responsible, and you have to look at the entire context when you create a communication. And if you get caught in this trolling, then I think, again, your response has to be authentic. Either you believe in what you've done and you stick to it, and which is actually a very good thing, because it was a thought out strategy. Or if you don't believe in it, then you come and apologize for whatever you have done or hurt, So I think that's where I would go.
All right, ma'am. Again, it was a quite insightful answer from your side. I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, they must learn from this. Ma'am, I must say that there's a lot to learn from you, but today we are short of time. So moving to my last question of this session. Actually, the question is, what are the warning signs of brand failure?
I wish everybody knew them. They would stop from failing the brand. But I think one has to be very careful about this one, because, there are signs which start before a brand really fails, right? And any brand has a latent equity. Any brand which is a decent brand has a latent equity that it has built. So even if you are doing something wrong with the brand, it won't immediately stop selling. It will take 2 or 3 years before that entire equity gets eroded, and then the brand starts going downhill. So I think some of the things that need to be watched out for is, are many consumers talking about your brand? In today's world, that is, earlier, say 15 years back, this was not such an important thing, because there was no digital media, there was no social media, and you consumed a brand in your house and you were happy with it. You may talk to it about to a few of your friends, but that was it. Today, any brand has a far bigger footprint than what the brand manager does, right? So therefore, and there is a lot of social conversation which happens on everything, negative and positive, like we discussed before. So the one sign is, if the brand is not in the buzz, in the talking, in the clouds, then your brand is definitely having a problem. It is becoming, consumers are becoming indifferent to the brand, or it is becoming irrelevant. So how much conversation is happening on the brand is very important. If you create a communication, is it being spoken about? If your brand has a new product, is it being spoken about? If your brand is just there, is it being spoken about? A different way. So the first thing for me is social media. The second thing is, I think every brand has to do a track, which is a track which can happen either monthly or quarterly or at least 6 monthly. When you check out on the imagery of your brand, what is it that you desired your brand to be, and is it the same imagery? Because sometimes your brand may be spoken about, but it is not spoken for the things that you want it to be spoken about, right? And similarly, the imagery, you may want your brand to be known as a trusted product for males, but today you find that the imagery is becoming a very a brand which probably is an on-the-go brand used by youth. Then the two are not talking to each other. So either you understand and you see if you want a variant which goes in that direction, or you make communication to bring it back to where it was. Or if you think that's a great area, then you see how you can give that angle, but don't forget the essence of the brand. So brand track to understand the imagery of the brand, what are consumers talking about your brand, what are consumers liking, and most importantly, what is it that consumers are not liking about your brand, because that is what will tell you the way forward. So a brand track is very important. Going and talking to consumers about your brand is very important. So one is you have a formal brand tag. The other is a very informal way of talking to your consumers and your customers, both, your other stakeholders, to understand if there is something that is pulling the brand down. Because when those things happen, then you have the telltale signs of your market share is going down, your sales are going down, your imagery parameters which are there, which is various parameters that you track your brand on are going down. So then those need to be monitored. So I think you have to follow a very systematic way. One is an informal way where you talk to people and see if there are socially the brand is there or not, and formally where you track the brand to see if it is in place or not.
All right, ma'am. It was again a very meaningful answer from your side. And I must say the kind of energy you brought into this session was very inspiring for all of us. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining and giving your important time. I must say it was a very healthy discussion with you on the topic. We look forward to conduct more such sessions with you in future. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining.
So thanks a lot, Harsh. It was really nice talking to you about brand, which is my passionate subject. And for viewers, do check out Pragmatism. It is available on Amazon, and give your feedback once you've read. How do you like it, and what are the comments that you have? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone.